Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Hunnicutt with Automotive Training Institute. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy life to listen to our webinar here. Today we're going to learn the proper way to go through an estimate, and then we're going to watch your average repair order increase big time because you're going to go through the estimate properly. I've been talking to my clients, and the further that we get into winter, the estimate average is going down. And it's just literally driving me crazy watching the average repair order decrease, watching the average estimate decrease. Your average estimate should be about $1,200 to $1,500. Some of my best shops, you have a really great technician and a really great service writer working in tandem together. The average estimate is literally around $2,200 on an average basis. When we're literally talking about winter coming along and watching it decline, I mean, why does it decline? Why do we get slower in winter? If we can get slower in winter and there's a reason for it and we can fix it, then we should. Half of my clients are tracking their estimate average. If you're not tracking your estimate average, you have to track it. If you don't know what you're asking for, then you have no clue if it's a problem as far as your relationship, your education, your courtesy check, your estimate. You're holding the line on the sale. You don't know what the problem is if your average repair order is going low. So you need to be able to figure out why the average repair order is low. So think about it like a diagnostic worksheet. Are you asking for enough? If the answer is yes, you're asking for enough, then you would actually go into relationship education and holding the line on the sale. But if you're not asking for enough, the answer would be courtesy check and or estimate. What I'm finding out is that most people are flat out just not asking for enough. If you're using the Dr. Monty tracker, you put in Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursday, Friday. It actually has 5 days and 6 days, and it will show you what your estimate average is if you're putting in the information. All of the coaches know how to use it, and at the end of this, I'm going to be sending out to the client fulfillment department all of the attachments that I'm showing you right now, and if you want them, all you got to do is contact your coach and they will send them to you. If you don't have a way to track your estimate average, then use the Dr. Monty daily tracker, because this thing really works. I'm not going to show everybody how to use it. I just need to make sure that everybody is using something to track their average. And if you're not using the Dr. Monty tracker and you have RO Writer, RO Writer's got a lost sales report in it. So you run the lost sales report by tech and by category, and then you run the sales report. Take the total lost sales and add it to the sales report. This gives you the total estimate. Then divide it by the total invoices, and you have the estimate average. You can actually track each writer and each technician as well. So you don't have to go through all of the hoopla of doing the daily tracker if you've got RO Writer. Protractor has a way to do it as well, which is really super easy. You can actually set it up on a dashboard. Mitchell does not have, and Nampa Trax does not have that I'm aware of. So you might want to contact Mitchell or Nampa or whatever and let them know that we need it to make it easy for you. But if you don't know your estimate average, number one, you need to find out what it is. Because once again, I'm just watching this thing plummet. It's just going down so bad it's not even funny. First thing that we're going to do to review the estimate, we're going to dive right in on the 7 steps that I'm going to walk you through here, is we're going to double check the courtesy check. The first reason that we're going to double check the courtesy check is I need the writer to actually see the vehicle. I don't care if you're running an electronic courtesy check. I don't care if you're running paper. I want the writer to actually see the vehicle. If they can see what's going on with the vehicle, and I truly believe that when they try to pick up the phone and call the customer, they can impart what their vision is, the image of what they've seen, to the customer so much easier, and it comes across as so much more believable that your conversion rate will actually go up. If you want your conversion rate to go up, then actually physically look at the vehicle. The second reason why is not all technicians are created equal. In doing the Dr. Monty tracker and the RO Writer reports, I'm literally finding that the classic ABC technician thing kind of exists big time out there. So your A-Tech is running the highest estimate. The B-Tech is running a medium estimate, and the C-Tech is running a super low estimate. The problem with that is that if you have 50 cars, your A-Tech is running like 12 cars, your B-Tech is running 12 cars, the A-Tech's got a $1,500 estimate average, the B-Tech's got an $800 estimate average, and the C-Tech is touching 26 cars, more than the other two combined, and he's got a $200 estimate average. Well, it's pretty easy to see that if your technicians are not all created equal, and I know one technician really likes to do oil seals, the other technician really does not like to do oil seals. And if that's the case, then you need to be double checking the courtesy checks to find out what they're not recommending. I know that the first thing that everybody's going to think is, oh, you double check my technicians and they're not going to like it. Well, I don't like my customer not knowing what's really wrong with their vehicle. I really like my customer to know that they can come in and get a complete courtesy check this time, get a complete estimate this time, because I'm not going to find $1,000 stuff worth of wrong today. They come back in 3 months to get another oil change, and I find another $1,000 worth wrong by a different technician, a different pair of glasses, a different set of eyes looking at it. So all people, all technicians, all riders need to be wearing the owner's pair of glasses. If they're not wearing the owner's pair of glasses on finding everything that's supposed to be found on a courtesy check, they need to be trained, and courtesy check clinics need to be done, whatever. But we have to get a perfect courtesy check done first. And then what I'm finding is that the service riders, let's go back to the winter thing, because we're getting slower during the winter. The technician will literally do not a very good courtesy check, because if they do a complete courtesy check on that hoopty, on that pile, then it's going to be too much on the courtesy check and the customer won't buy it. So first off, the technician will do a bad courtesy check. And then they hand it to the rider, and the rider's still like, oh, that's too much, and they take some more stuff off. I've literally watched the estimate average plummet down to a third of what it was during summer right now in January and February. A third. The estimate average has plummeted a third. It's not because of technicians, it's not because of service riders, it's because of both of them. And I'm not saying everyone every time. I mean, realistically, if you're not double checking the courtesy check and you're not double checking the estimate to make sure that everything from the courtesy check is getting on the estimate, then why not? We definitely need to be. Kim Hickey did a webinar 2 months ago on the service advisor checklist, or the advisor service checklist. It's built by time and mileage. I think it's purely genius. And it looks kind of like this. You put the customer's name and the current mileage and all of the information on it, and then you go through the history and you write down the date it was last performed and the mileage it was last performed, and is it due, yes or no, and if not, when. So you take this sheet and you go all the way through it, make up your own, I don't care, it's got to have your belief system on it, and you literally take the estimate and you put it through this smell test. Every time. And if you don't have a history on it, then you better start talking to the customer as far as, when was the last time they had all of this performed. And Kim does a really great job on her webinar, so I don't want to go any further with it than that. You watch hers and she goes really in depth on it. This is where it gets fun, because everybody that knows me knows that I don't like the manufacturer's guidelines for maintenance. I think that the maintenance needs to be 75,000 miles on shocks and struts. I think that the flushes need to be done at 30,000. I'm really into maintenance and being way more aggressive than the manufacturer's guidelines. So don't use the manufacturer's guidelines. Use a realistic smell test that y'all have figured out when you're going to recommend in your shop by time and mileage. And it needs to be pretty aggressive comparatively to manufacturer's guidelines until you start looking at some of the manufacturer's guidelines. I'm shocked. I mean, there's some Subarus out there. The differentials are 15,000 miles, not 30,000 miles. There's a lot of spark plugs that are still needing to be changed every 30,000 miles that we need to be aware of. All kinds of stuff. There's actually one that blew my mind when I found out about it. This is a timing belt for a Hyundai, and on the Tiburon, 2007 and 2008, it's number 59 right there. It says normal service replaced every 60,000 miles or 48 months, and severe service replacement at 40,000 miles or 48 months. I was totally shocked. 40,000 miles. Who would have ever thought, because most of us are in severe duty areas, right? You either got really hot, really cold, or both. So most of us are in severe duty. 40,000 miles. Can you imagine? I was totally blown away when I found that out. Number 5, are you using the packaging around document, and is everything on the estimate? How many people are actually using the packaging around document? It's not complete because it all won't fit on here, but I mean, if you're doing brakes, pads and rotors, brake flush, clean and adjust, rear brakes where applicable, hardware kits, brake clean, adjust emergency brake, lube calipers, rotate and balance, brake hoses. There's a lot of stuff that we can literally add to brakes if it's truly needed. We need to use the packaging around document like there's no tomorrow. I'm going to send all of this information to the coaching department. If you want it, all you have to do is contact your coach and they'll be more than glad to send it to you. This is actually the famous 10 and packaging around document. It starts out with all of the famous 10 that you really need to play with and their subheadings, and then it goes to the packaging around. When we look at an air conditioner, are we adding the belt, the pulleys, the tensioners, the cabin air filter, Frigifresh? And alignment. Are we doing a rotate and balance, inspecting the tire pressure, ride height? I mean, ride height is so critical, it's not even funny, and it's one of the main things that we don't do nowadays. Shock, strut, springs, again, by time and mileage, is 75,000 miles. Shims, tire dates, tread depth, steering parts. There's so much that we can add to these things that's not even funny in a realistic manner. I'm not trying to rip anybody off. Timing belt, this is big time. Is everybody adding what they're supposed to be adding as far as the packaging around? So by the time that you literally get to this part right here, you can take an estimate, and your estimate average, we say 1,200 to 1,500. We say that because the average mileage that's out there is 100,000 miles. At 100,000 miles, is $1,500 enough? I don't think it is. But we got to start somewhere, and we got to have a minimum level of expectation. I'm thinking closer to $2,200, $2,500, an estimate average. And then I'm going to ask you one more thing. Can we add to parts and labor without causing a stink? We've already built this huge estimate, and now I want you to actually add to the parts of the labor. And I mean, literally, if you're going to have a water pump that you're selling for $259, can you sell it for $279 instead of $259 without causing a stink? If it's 1.3 hours labor, can you raise it to 1.5? Are you going to chase your business away? Is the customer not going to buy it because of the extra $40 on that ticket? I don't think it's going to cause that much of a problem. There's too many times that we forget a part, we forget a labor, we do this, we do that. We eat it, we eat it, we eat it, we eat it. It can't always be that we're eating it. Sometimes we have to be able to add $1 here or $1 there without it creating a stink. This is where it gets really fun. Once you have a perfect estimate, then you hand it to your tech for a final review. I came into the industry through the tire side, and I really didn't know that much about the mechanical side until I started building these estimates. And I would make the estimate, I would call the customer. The customer would say, yeah, I hand it to my technician, and they would tell me the 5 or 6 things that I forgot. I would like to say it only took me 5 or 6 times for that happening before I cut my snap, but it's probably like 100 times that happened before I cut my snap, and I started handing it to my technicians, and I put the responsibility back on them. But then this weird thing happened. Some of my technicians would tell me what I forgot as far as the parts list is concerned, but then tell me I wasn't charging enough for labor. Well, okay. I definitely don't want to rip off my customers. I don't want to rip off my technicians. And we all know about that Cadillac that we did 3 or 4 months ago that we did that job on, that our best tech took 6 hours, but we only got paid 4 on it. And we all agreed that in the future, if we ever run into a job like that, we're going to charge for 6 hours, not 4 hours. That's not what I'm talking about. If the technician is just holding out their hand saying, I want more, I want more, I want more, and there's no reason for it, they can't prove that they need more legitimately, then have the discussion with them about not having their hand out. But we want to get paid. We don't want to rip off the technicians, especially nowadays. So if it's legitimate and they need more money for it and it's real, then add it. If it's not real, then obviously don't. And make sure that we're not going to be ripping off the customers at all. And I mean at all. And then understand something really, really important. As you can see, there's 3 warnings, right? If you are not building a great relationship and you're not educating your customer on the drop, then do not ask for a big estimate, because it will kill your business like nothing you've ever seen. If you're going to build this fantastic estimate, but you're not going to let the customer know what you're doing with them and for them and why, do not approach the customer with the estimate. It will be the worst thing that you could possibly ever do. So a quick review is we're going to double check every courtesy check. We're going to make sure that everything from the courtesy check is on the estimate. We're going to make sure that everything from the advisor service checklist by time and mileage is on the estimate. We're going to go through the manufacturer guidelines to make sure that we're not forgetting anything that they're more aggressive on than we are. We're going to go through the packaging around document. We're going to add any money that we can to parts and labor without causing a stink. And we're going to review with the tech to see if they can find anything missing before calling the customer. Based off of the $1,200 to $1,500 average estimate, what should the average ARO be? The 80-20 rule tells us that a normal shop with normal relationships built, normal processes in place, should be able to sell 20%. The 80-20 rule tells us that we get 80% of our money from 20% of our clients. So if you're really going to work it, then you're going to be looking at 30%, 33%, 40%. And I mean, think about it. On $1,500, 40% is $600. I'm always going to try and get to at least a 40% conversion rate, and I'm always going to try to get to at least a $1,500 estimate. Regarding advising the customer on the drop, you said, tell them what we're doing for them and why we are doing it. Is that correct? Not to really belabor the relationship part, but you need to walk out to the car. You need to do a walk around with the customer at the car, and you need to start asking them the probing questions. You need to determine their needs, and you need to qualify them. What that means is literally, do they like the car? How do they drive the car? Do they have a trailer hitch? What do they pull with their trailer hitch? Do they have baby seats? I mean, we really need to know who they are and what we're talking about and how. At that point, start asking that stupid question that we're not supposed to ask. How much longer do you plan on keeping the car? When they say they don't like the car and they're going to get rid of it, then say, I can appreciate that. What kind of car are you going to buy? And then walk them through Edmunds.com, True Cost to Own. I did a webinar on the True Cost to Own with Edmunds.com. If that's the case, then go back and watch that one, and that really teaches you about the relationship and the educating the customer. On my last one, I really covered that in depth. How do you sell a 30,000 mile flush when the customer has long-term coolant in the vehicle that costs 3 times as much as regular? I don't push BG or WINS or anything like that. BG sells more of their flush stuff to the dealers than they do to the aftermarket. The dealers don't have a problem actually doing and following the BG guidelines. We do, because we're in the aftermarket. Oh no, we don't want to go against the manufacturers, but the dealers go against the manufacturers all the time. If you're dealing with European cars and stuff, I'm not going to try and go against a lot of their stuff by any stretch. I'm not going to be replacing Mercedes-Benz coolant at 30,000 miles. Normal American and Asian cars, I'm going to be way more aggressive on that stuff, and I'm going to base it on the BG or the WINS warranty, and them saying that if they flush it every 30,000 miles, they'll warranty it for life. They're putting their money where their mouth is, the manufacturer is not. Why recommend a thermostat with a timing belt replacement? Most timing belts drive the water pump, so if you're going to get into the water pump, then get into anything and everything that's in the coolant system, based on time and mileage. If the timing belt's got 100 grand on it or whatever when you're replacing it, I wouldn't recommend a thermostat at 40,000 miles on that Hyundai by any stretch. But I definitely would on 100,000 miles, big time. I don't have a problem replacing a heat spring steel thermostat that's been started and stopped and gotten hot and cold and flexed itself how many times in 100,000 miles? If you're building a 915 estimates for a customer, do you show all the estimate to the technician for the review, or do you just show the major repair estimate? I'm going to show the entire estimate to my technician. I'm not going to try and hide anything because I'm hopefully going to sell it and they're going to see it anyway. So just show the technician what the ticket is. Any tips for selling more maintenance flushes, shocks, and struts? There's all kinds. And if you've ever been to one of my roundtables, I've said this a couple of times, so I'll say it again. Shocks and struts. I basically ask people, have you ever walked a mile? And they'll normally say they can walk a mile in 15 or 20 minutes. I really want them to understand, if they say like in 10 minutes, I say, dude, they sprint a 4-minute mile. So you can actually walk one in 10. In other words, make it real. Make it to where they know that it's going to take them 15, 20 minutes to walk the mile. Y'all do it. Close your eyes. I'm going to block a road around you off. And I want you to walk that road, and I want you to look at all of the bumps and potholes. I want you to look at the edge of the road because the car is riding on the edge of the road. While you're walking that mile, how many corners is the car going to turn? How many driveways is it going to go in and out of? How many speed bumps is it going to go over? Now that I'm going to put them in a car, drive that mile. How many times do the shocks and the struts go up and down? Well, most people say 1,000. They'll say 100. And I try and get them down to a realistic number like 20. Would they agree that it's 20 significant up-downs in that mile? Most people will agree that there's 20 significant up-downs in a mile. So it's 75,000 miles when I'm recommending shocks and struts. 20 significant up-downs times 75,000 miles is 1.5 million significant up-downs on that shock or strut. Is there anything keeping me from putting that new set on today? I sold more flushes off of one question and one question alone than anything else I've ever done. It's simple. Why do you change the oil in your car so often? And they'll say, to protect the motor, or because my dad said so. It's literally, the dad said so to protect the engine, right? So how much does the transmission cost? It costs literally as much as the motor in most cases. How much does the anti-lock brake system cost? Almost as much as the motor does, right? How much does the power steering pump, rack and pinion, what all does that cost? How much do the injectors cost? So you want your motor to be good and you want everything around it to be suspect. Is that it? And most people go, no, and they'll buy. They just want to be educated. How many cars a day should a service writer be handling using these formats? It's a great question. I like to figure that if you've got a decent rider, it's going to take about 45 minutes a car if they're going to do all of the stuff that they're supposed to do. So take however many hours they're working in a day, divide it by the 45 minutes, and there you have your car count that each one should be able to handle realistically. If a new customer is in an obvious rush and wants to get in and out of the door, is this the right time and is it okay to push for a bigger sale? Could this cause the loss of a customer business? You have to control the sales process. If the customer controls the sales process, you just lost the sale, not the other way around. If it's an old customer you've been doing business with a long time, they can throw you the keys, that's fine. Go do the walk around without them, and then pick up the phone and call them and say, all right, I did the walk around. This is what we found on your vehicle. We are going to be looking at some key maintenance ingredients today, your shocks, your struts, your flushes, whatever. We are going to be doing that 32-point courtesy check. Did you have any other concerns? But you still need to contact the customer and you still need to control your sales process. Even if they were in a hurry, you can work around it, but you still need to be in control of your process. It's that simple. How do you build a relationship with a new customer that requests to send the quote via email and drops off the vehicle before we open? I love that. When they drop off the vehicle before you open, it's the same scenario that I just went through. You're literally going to build the estimate. You're going to do the walk around. You're going to do everything that you're supposed to do as far as pre-building the maintenance estimate. You're supposed to. You're supposed to do all of this stuff and then pick up the phone and say, yo, I have the car in possession. And customers are so relieved that you actually have the car in possession, it's not even funny. And then you did the walk around, you noticed this or you noticed that, or you didn't notice anything, everything looks great. And you're still going to have the conversation with them about it. And then you're going to bring it in, you're going to do the courtesy check, you're going to complete the estimate, and if they want it by an email, I don't care, I'm going to send them the entire estimate by an email. Why is the walk around important? Most of the time it's hard to do this in our shop. Well, it's hard to do that in everybody's shop because nobody really likes to do it. The walk around is important because you're showing interest in the customer in the car and you're actually redefining the way you do business. If you stay on your side of the counter and they stay on their side of the counter and business is as usual, then we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that even a little bit. We want to change how we're doing business. We want to change the approach that we're bringing. If you're not changing anything and you call them up and ask for $3,200 later, important, warning, warning, warning. If you're not building a great relationship and educating your customer on the drop, then do not ask for a big estimate because it will kill your business. You have to change the way that you're doing business. Is it okay when a customer comes in and has a big item that needs to fix once that repair is done? Is it okay to hit them with a big maintenance ticket? Not only no, but no. If I'm your customer and you don't do a complete checkout and educate me completely about what's going on with my vehicle and you whack me for however much money, and I say yes, and then you turn around and say, oh, and by the way, to maintain your vehicle properly, it's going to be another $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever, and I didn't get to decide up front whether I wanted to keep the vehicle or not, I'm not happy. Would you be happy? I'm not happy even a little bit. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm going to be sending out the email to all of the coaches, so if you need anything, they'll have the information in about 2 minutes. I hope everybody has a great day, and thank you so much for attending.